My name is Justine Harper. I'm the VP of Concierges at Unchained Capital. Originally, I was asked to be on this panel and represent Unchained, but unfortunately, one of the moderators was not able to make it due to travel restrictions, and so I am your second place moderator here. So I'll try to do my best to fill in those shoes. So to get started, if everybody would like to maybe start with Paul here, do a quick introduction. Who are you? Who are you here representing? And also, why Bitcoin? Out of all the other industries to build a business in, why here?
Hi, my name is Paul Puey. I'm CEO and co-founder of Edge. We're a self-custody exchange wallet application that lets you buy, sell, and trade Bitcoin and other crypto while always holding your own keys and funds. And so why Bitcoin? Why build a business on Bitcoin? Number one, it's obviously opportunity because it is an early industry that needs a lot of solutions, especially improving the experience for the average user. And number two, if you really like riding roller coasters, this is the place for you. Forming a startup, I say, is like riding a roller coaster and all the ups and downs. Doing a startup on Bitcoin is like riding a roller coaster in a teacup. And so if you really like to vomit on a year-by-year basis, then this is the industry for you.
I love it. Oh, switch on the mic.
Hi, I'm Stephen Pear, co-founder and CEO of BitPay. We've been around since 2011. We do payment processing, payroll. We also have a crypto wallet, and you can get a MasterCard debit card to go with that. So we process payments. We build a platform that manages the whole workflow of a crypto payment for companies. And so maybe some of you in the room have made a purchase through our platform at some point. Why I got into crypto and Bitcoin, I'm a computer scientist. I got excited way back in the 1990s about something called DigiCash, and that started me down this sort of rabbit hole of, thinking about money and payment protocols and things like that for the internet. And I was just excited over the years to see progress in that direction. Followed a number of different open source projects along the way, and I guess by the time Bitcoin came around, I'd almost given up on the notion that you could have a true payment protocol for the internet that didn't require like a centralized company or central bank processing all the payments. So I thought it was really cool, and it's a lot of fun to work in this industry. And I don't tend to vomit it, but it is a roller coaster.
Perfect.
Okay, is it? My name is Jason. I'm COO at Okcoin. We're a cryptocurrency exchange and trading platform. We help individuals buy, store, and manage their crypto, as well as institutions who connect to us for liquidity and allow them to build their crypto and business and Bitcoin businesses on top of our services. As for why Bitcoin, we're not as old as BitPay here in 2011. We started in 2013 out of China. And so, crypto has been a global phenomenon where it really is a source of freedom and financial empowerment for the individual. And we see that all around the world. And so for me, as a have background in finance as well as in sort of technology, it was this really perfect intersection to jump right in and help more people get access and learn more about this space.
Frank Hennig, I'm director of the R&D Innovation Lab at NCR Corporation, and I also run our digital currency, newest kind of business unit within the company. And for me, it's almost the answer is, why would I want to do anything else but work in this space? I think of, the opportunity. NCR is a company that a lot of people have heard of, many haven't. It's been around since 1884. It's behind, every time you eat at Chipotle, go to Chick-fil-A, go to Walmart, probably bank online, but it's kind of behind the scenes powering commerce and banking. And so for me, the idea of being able to take this fundamental way to exchange value, meaning Bitcoin, and put that behind everywhere people bank, shop, dine, and globally, right? We're in 160 countries. It's just an opportunity I couldn't pass up. So I'm excited about bringing the Liberty X team online to be part of the family and kind of taking what they've built over the last 8 years to be able to take that globally. So that's kind of what we're focused on.
Perfect. Thank you. And thank you all for being here. To get started, I know we are sort of limited on time. This is a shorter panel, so I'm just going to kind of dig right into the topic. So the first one I wanted to chat about was just giving back. The beauty of Bitcoin is we all are sort of aligned in these incentives, and we are all incentivized to give back in one way or another, because as the ecosystem improves, we all sort of benefit from that. So I know that, Jason, you at Okcoin have a great history of sort of supporting open source development and other aspects in the space. So I didn't know if you wanted to chat a little bit about your guys' stance on that, and also perhaps future continuation of those plans.
Yeah, sure. I think giving back is a nice word, but it's also not, it feels good. There's a charitable aspect to it, but it's also not just that, right? We are, it is core to our business and to a lot of our businesses, and we know that we need to invest in the underlying development and education and continued growth of the protocol itself. So we have a program called the Developer Grant Program where we do allocate, I think, $500,000 a year, and we give that to some of the organizations that were up earlier this morning, Brink, OpenSats. We work with them to make sure that new developers come into the space, and as well as everyone here are educated about how open source development even works, right? We did a survey of our users early in the year, and it was astonishing. A large amount of respondents thought that Satoshi was paying the salaries of Bitcoin Core developers.
Yeah, that's fair.
But so yeah, I mean, education is important, and thanks for bringing that up.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think your point is perfect. Calling it giving back is an interesting term, but in reality, we're kind of patting ourselves on the back if we say that. We're helping kind of, how do you say it? We're helping ourselves as we help others, which goes back to incentives. When incentives are aligned as beautifully as they are in Bitcoin, that's the beauty of it. We can help ourselves while helping the whole ecosystem. Paul, did you want to add anything on behalf of Edge Wallet? I know you guys have a history of this as well.
Yeah, so we have contributed lightly to some of the open source implementations of Bitcoin, but one other aspect of giving back is just simply being open source. And it's a piece of that a lot of people should look for in the products and services that they use. If you're open source, then what you promise can be audited and verified that that's what you're actually delivering. As well, a lot of the ideas that are put forth and implemented can then be lent to other products and services. We've made implementations in our app via libraries for cryptocurrency and Bitcoin that have then been borrowed and used, ironically in some closed source applications, but it has expanded the industry and it's expanded the utility for other companies. So multiple ways of giving back, both contributing to the protocol efforts, which admittedly, you're right, in that it's a little bit backpatting to say that it's giving back because you do need to support that industry, you need to support that development. And unfortunately though, admittedly, some of that support might be very biased to what a company really needs out of the protocol. And that's just the nature of history. That's just the nature of how we operate, the nature of business. And hopefully by it being an open source project, many different companies can contribute it. And then you get a balance of the needs and desires of the different companies in the influence of the protocol.
This is just sort of a follow-up on that. We have a lot of companies represented here or organizations working to help corporations have an easier time donating to open source. What sort of things would you guys like to see out of those foundations or companies coming to be to help you, guide you where to donate? Is that something like, are there any tips or tricks or anything you would like to see out of maybe OpenSats or Brink, or do you feel like that is quite easy in the current setup? Do you guys have a hard time coming across people that need donations, I guess is the question.
Is that for?
To anyone who wants to answer. I just threw this one in. So.
Yeah, I'm not going to talk about that question specifically, but I did want to, one of the things that is really cool to me is, Bitcoin shows you that an entire economy and a huge economy can be built around open source. Mm-hmm. And, I think it's a model for going forward that, Bitcoin itself would have never worked had it not been open source. And all other blockchains as well, same thing. If you can't actually read and audit the code and understand and convince yourself that it's doing what it's supposed to do, people would have never adopted and started using Bitcoin. But it's a proof point that, many years ago, like in the 90s when open source was first becoming this kind of thing, there's a lot of skepticism about that. And, I thought just that economic pressures were going to force the world to open source. And you look at Bitcoin, it's really cool to see that this is a proof point that open source is the way of the future, and this is how you make money at it, how you generate an economy, right?
Absolutely. So let's talk a little bit about the relationship, speaking open source. We have private entities, and then we have everything built on this open source software. Tell me a little bit, Frank, how is that working? I know you had the innovation department there. How is that working with such an open source community and contributors? How does that look like as a private entity itself?
Yeah, I guess to be honest, it makes our large group of lawyers in IP a little bit nervous. And I think that's part of the education of getting into this space. They're used to thinking about things from an ownership standpoint, from risk management, from the legal challenges. And I think, the reality is that's not the industry that we're operating in, right? It's something that you have to kind of get comfortable with. And that's, to me, an opportunity to both leverage that capability and then also to, play by those rules, right? If you're going to use open source packages, products, kits to contribute back to them, to be able to actually both use them to build your business, but to give back as you're improving it. So I think that's an area that's still a journey for a company like NCR, but it's something that we believe is core to being part of this industry and being a fair player.
Awesome. Anybody else want to add into that specific note there?
Yeah, since our entire product is open source, we've seen contributions from outside developers, not within our company. And probably the biggest challenge is just really maintaining the quality of the code base amongst just random other people that you might find contributing. And to anyone that works for a project, that there's a balance between writing code and then auditing and verifying code. And with a lot of open source projects, if you are a maintainer, a lot of the bandwidth sucked up is really verifying and code checking what gets contributed. That tends to be the challenge we find that we're having to scale up our efforts in just simply checking code. That ends up being the big bandwidth, and also a skill set for all of you guys out there and girls that are developers. That's probably a skill set you should really harden on, and that we found most developers don't have hardened, is not just writing, but checking someone else's code auditing. It's much harder in a way than writing. I did it a lot in kind of the tail end of my career as a developer. And it is a definitive skill set that is sorely needed. And I think a lot of open source projects will find, especially even Bitcoin Core, you'll see that some of the biggest names are people that almost never write code, and they probably don't get the respect deserved because going through someone else's code is both not fun and a huge challenge. So it's a piece that I think more people should focus on, and you'll have a lot of opportunity in the industry.
I've heard that quite a bit, that we need reviewers and auditors more than writers.
Yep.
So going forward on that relationship between sort of open source community, core contributors, its private entities, because of the way that Bitcoin works and it is open source software, the direction that it takes on upgrades is done in a consensus way. And in the past, there has been some public disagreements on the direction that should go, most notoriously SegWit versus SegWit 2x, and aka the block size wars. So I just had a quick question. Stephen, I know BitPay had a pretty public support of increasing the block size, including a blog post that went out essentially saying that if you don't upgrade your nodes, there will be severe security risk, which turned out to not only be inaccurate, but there was a bug involved. So tell me a little bit about a company. Has that been sort of a learning lesson for you? Has that experience changed how you sort of approach these upgrades? It's not like running a normal business in any other industry, I assume. So tell me a little bit about that experience and perhaps what you've learned from it, if anything.
So at the time, we weren't like opposed to SegWit or whatever. And actually, it wasn't really our own opinion that was sort of what was in our thought process. At the time, you had miners on one side of the table saying, just increase the block size, what's the big deal? And on the other side, you had other people arguing that there's a real risk, to consensus, right? If a subset of people can make a big change like that, right? Both valid points, I think. And so there's this division and a fear at the time that, and we were all Bitcoin maximalists at the time, right? And so there's this real fear of a split in the community. And so we thought, and a few other companies thought, that if we could kind of help smooth things over between the miners and the core developers, that maybe we could all stay together for at least a little while longer. And that was the thought process. Instead, we stepped right in the middle of, a war and took a lot of hits for it. So yeah, I guess the thing to take away from that is, and since then we really tried not to get involved in these kind of debates. and debate is probably putting it mildly. And just let the community figure things out, the communities figure things out. And since then, people have tried to drag us into other similar kinds of, confrontations that have happened in the community. And we're very resistant to allowing ourselves to get involved in that again. Because, it was a disaster.
I can understand it, and I know it was probably a tough spot to be in. And I know you guys have implemented SegWit since then. So do you feel that at the end of the day, the right decision was made at the end? Or do you have any strong opinion on that? I actually
do, yeah. The point about governance and consensus was the key point, right? And a real, had that gone forward and a change like that been made, it could have had major negative implications for governance of blockchains. If you have any small subset of people that are capable of pushing through changes, that's a threat. That's a risk.
Thank you. And then I just had a quick question for Frank as well. Kind of going off of that, I know that at Unchained, anything that's changing in upgrades to Bitcoin Core, we have to very much pay attention to that and change sort of our engineering schedule depending on what's going on. Frank, do you guys kind of see that same thing on your side? Is that something that you guys actively are watching and planning for?
It's an interesting thing. A lot of the software we provide ends up being deployed by our customers, right? So the banks, the retailers, the restaurants, and so there's almost two schedules. One is the side that's the internal aspect of it, and that, I think for any developer, it's ideal if you can maintain a consistent schedule, not make changes to your sprints, but that's just not the reality we live in. But oftentimes that's not really the limiting factor. It's what does it take to actually go out into production? And so our customers oftentimes have their own schedule that, to be honest with you, is a challenge in this business because it does change frequently enough that the idea of waiting 6 months to deploy something is just not tenable. So I think it's actually part of the modularization and use of APIs and kind of separating concerns to keep the core services that are related to Bitcoin separate from just the base layer. And that's part of the approach that we're taking, is to maintain some separation there so that we don't have these extremely long upgrade cycles when something changes.
Perfect. All right, so I had another, just kind of to give you guys an opportunity to really talk about what you're doing. So give me, what are you looking forward to? What do you have launching? What is coming out from the company specifically that you're looking forward to? Or even maybe something happening in the Bitcoin world, some sort of upgrade. I know we've got Taproot coming out, things that you guys are looking forward to. So Paul, if you don't mind starting, and then we'll just go right down the line.
So to borrow one of the big buzzwords outside of the Bitcoin space, like in the Ethereum space, DeFi, I think this is something that Bitcoin definitely needs, and it's something that is coming to Bitcoin via projects such as Rootstock. Fundamentally, I think Bitcoin is a great base layer of currency and to some degree a payment mechanism. Obviously, layer one, it's a bit of a challenge. Hopefully with layer two, that helps. But the thing that's missing, if you look at the entire stack of the financial ecosystem, money and payments is only at the bottom of the stack. Financial services is where a lot of people put their money and what they're leveraging and what motivates them to use a specific currency in the first place. If your currency doesn't have financial services, you move to the currency that does. So by Bitcoin offering financial services, being able to collateralize a loan, take out money, and hedge and be able to trade different assets without those financial services, we could see a leak out from Bitcoin into other assets. So that coming to Bitcoin is what I'm very excited about. I'm excited about projects like Rootstock, Sovereign, Money on Chain, which are really mirroring a lot of what makes people jealous of Ethereum, but putting that onto Bitcoin as a side chain. That's what I'm really excited about, and also something that we are looking at integrating directly into our app Edge, which provides the financial services that you normally need fully centralized companies to get, whether it's trading between assets, whether it's an interest-bearing account yield, or it's being able to collateralize a loan with Bitcoin. Normally that's fully centralized services. We're going to take smart contracts and effectively nearly eliminate the need for those centralized services. And that's what I'm excited about. I've been not a Bitcoin maximalist, but I've been a self-custody maximalist since we founded the company and discovered Bitcoin. And so this really completes the picture and is probably the number one thing I'm most excited about.
Awesome. Stephen?
In our wallet, we've recently rolled out capabilities to leverage decentralized exchanges. So putting a good user interface on top of that is great. I'm excited about the direction that's headed, and sort of reducing the ecosystem's reliance on centralized exchanges. And then on the merchant side, we recently announced our partnership with Verifone. So very excited about that. They're in about 40% of the world's point of sale terminals, and so we're rolling out our the ability to pay crypto at the terminal, and they've got a ton of interest from their customers, and I expect that'll be exciting over the next year or so. So that's on the point of sale side. On the e-commerce side, we're just constantly adding new e-commerce platforms and enabling those and making it pretty much so that almost any business is just a matter of flipping a switch and you can start accepting crypto. And there's just a huge amount of interest out there in doing that. So really excited about that. And yeah, we'll have a lot more exciting things that I'm not ready to announce yet.
That's fair. Jason?
Such a tease. On our part, number one, self-custody. I think we're all champions of that. I will fight for that always. But as a centralized exchange, we recognize that users want to have choice, right? Sometimes a centralized exchange offers a different experience, and that's what we provide. And so on our side, what we're excited about is, Paul made a good point about sort of the things that you could do on top of Bitcoin. Rootstock, I think, is a great example. We've been supporting the stacks, which is also you could debate what type of sidechain or layer 2 or layer 1.5 or whatever you want to say. That's been trying to build DeFi and other services on top of Bitcoin, and we've been supporting that on our platform too. And users today can go and stake their stacks tokens to earn Bitcoin. It's part of the process. But coming down the pipe, we have a new mode that we're pushing forward, which is we call it Satoshi Mode or Sats Mode. Just really trying to even make it more easy for people to get access and relate the large dollar amounts of Bitcoin today into something more meaningful to them on a day-to-day basis. That's going to be really fun, I hope, and encourage you guys to check that out. We've integrated Lightning, and so Lightning has been pretty popular, and we're working on how to make that even more discoverable and even more easy to use. Lightning addresses are coming down the pipe for us. And so, yeah, lots of cool stuff.
Love to hear it. Frank?
Yeah, I mean, as an engineer, I'll echo a lot of the technology improvements, BIPs that are coming online are exciting. I think where we're focused today is really, about that adoption side and getting, kind of the next group of people. So those people who aren't technologists, who aren't as comfortable with technology, how do you make Bitcoin easy and accessible to them? And so that's really where we're trying to focus on, the ability, the potential to go into a quarter of the restaurants, roughly half the retailers, 500+ thousand ATMs around the world. Like if we can go make those all endpoints, all those on-ramps available, easy to use for people, and whether they want to bring their own wallet or whether they want something hosted, just to create that access. That's, I think, the part that's most exciting to us and the area that we're really focused on in the next, call it few quarters.
Thank you. Well, we only have a few minutes left, so I was going to give everybody a chance for last remarks before we get going. Paul, do you want to start us off again? Closing remarks, I should say.
Closing remarks. So, Bitcoin, where is it today? Where are we going in the future? I definitely think, as Ed mentioned, layering services on top. That really completes the picture for me. And while we do have choice, I do fundamentally think that the challenge of self-custody is getting alleviated day by day, and also the service offerings that were very, very limited in the early days. But before, self-custody only meant holding Bitcoin. It only meant sending and receiving. We'll slowly start to really incorporate full financial services. And I do invite people, while it's challenging, this is kind of the small period of time where it's challenging, but gives you kind of the sneak peek of what's really coming up. And if you are looking at building a Bitcoin business, maybe that's the reason why you're listening to this panel today. Really, opportunities in Bitcoin are where you've kind of got the bleeding edge. And the financial services on top, especially the DeFi financial services, are where there is really little baked out from the viewpoint of user experience. So really taking a lot of those complex experiences, which are just protocols, they're not really interfaces yet, they're not apps, and turning those into full-fledged apps that integrate existing services, maybe even the traditional financial services and banks, into the DeFi world is probably the biggest opportunity that has not yet been leveraged in Bitcoin. So leverage that as your opportunity if you're looking for one.
I'm just excited about blockchains as a database technology. when you think about traditionally architected databases, there's like this Oracle database that sits in the middle, and you're trying to keep bad actors from breaking into that and modifying the history or the changes to that database, right? And the Bitcoin databases flip that on its head, right? And so instead of trying to keep bad actors out, we invite everybody in as long as they play by the rules, as long as they produce modifications to this database that adhere to the rules. And then you have a consensus process by which everybody agrees on a temporally coherent sequence of changes to that database. And I think this is the pattern for most databases going forward. And we're going to see the internet transform from, a traditionally architected, interconnected, and very vulnerable set of databases to one that's a lot of interconnected blockchain-based databases. And there's a lot of questions about how you're going to create the incentive mechanisms and how those databases are going to be secured. Do you tie them to the Bitcoin blockchain and tap into the mining ecosystem there? Are they side chains? Are they layer 2? A lot of questions to be answered there yet that still are an open question, but it's really exciting.
Jason?
What was the question again?
Sorry, we're just doing closing remarks.
Just whatever I want.
Yeah, whatever you want.
Cool. Well, I think it's really awesome actually to have this opportunity for all of us to be here in this room, and there's some really amazing developers and technical presentations, and even for beginners. I walked around and I'm just amazed by. There's so much even I, having been in the space for a little bit, can learn. And like Paul said, there we are kind of on the bleeding edge and go absorb and kind of see what the future could potentially be like. And then I just want to comment. I know you asked Stephen a tough questions. I felt a little bad. I felt like that's kind of in our past, right? It's like we've all taken lessons from what happened in the block size war, or whatever we call it these days. I feel like even as a business ourselves, we supported, we chose to be neutral and let both chains kind of exist. But I think with hindsight, I think we now know how that governance process has strengthened the protocol as well as our communities. And so I actually think it's and I know Paul, actually I know in your app too. When a user comes to say, hey, I want to get access and learn about Bitcoin, they still see things like Bitcoin Cash and Bitcoin X, Y, and Z, and right up there. And so I think it's important for not the technical stuff anymore, but really just from the community and educational side to be clear, what are we actually talking about here, right? We're talking about Bitcoin. We're not talking about something else. And so we as a business made this choice earlier to get rid of Bitcoin Cash and any other type of thing that says Bitcoin on it. We do support other tokens, let's be clear, but Bitcoin there's only one Bitcoin in our minds, and so I kind of implore that the community take even more steps to clarify that for the people that have yet to come onto the Bitcoin sort of broader ecosystem. That's my. I guess I'll leave it there. Thanks.
No, I fully agree that education is vital, and that hurdle when you first come in of seeing all the different Bitcoins, I know personally is a huge hurdle. So more companies taking a stance against that, I think is not against it, but just taking a choice there is super helpful. And yeah, I think Stephen answered the question great. I think it's a learning lesson, and I think as a Bitcoin business, this is kind of part of the journey, right? So for sure. And then Frank, chance on closing.
Yeah, I'll add a couple things. I mean, I think for me personally, and what I try to kind of drive at the company I work for today is just how important Bitcoin is, not just for those of us who maybe are used to more stable currencies, for people around the world. And I think that mission behind that, the educational side, is just an important area that I'm really proud to be able to contribute to. And I'm just, as a person who lives in Atlanta, a company that's headquartered here, I'm really excited to see this kind of a conference and the growth here right in our own backyard. So huge thanks to Michael Tidwell and everybody in the organizing group. These things are tough to put on. So it's really great to see this here, and welcome for everybody that's out of town. And last thing I'll leave with is just the opportunity to me, Bitcoin as a fundamental way to exchange value, and being in the commerce and banking space and just thinking about how much of that business relates to exchange of value just makes me extremely bullish, especially all the conversations that we have under NDA with customers of ours that aren't ready to talk publicly, but just to see that mindset shift from where they were thinking about this 2 years ago and a year ago and today, and just imagining where we're going to be, is just really exciting.
Perfect. Well, I just wanted to take a minute to shill Unchained since I'm sitting here. So just wanted to take a quick minute. In the Basics Village at 2:15, Unchained Capital will be putting on a retirement fund workshop. So essentially, if you'd like to learn how to turn your dirty fiat retirement fund into the hardest asset that has ever existed while holding your own keys, meet us over there. And otherwise, I just want to thank the TAB conference team. I know you guys are kicking ass back there, keeping it on track. Hopefully we didn't go over. And I just want to thank everybody for being here. And yeah, look forward to seeing you guys out there.